Greetings, I am Herbert Erpaderp, and it's time for another one of those things where there are questions asked of Herbert Erpaderp, and I answer them. Luckily, I'm Herbert Erpaderp, so it's appropriate for me to do that answering. First up, Hetzer's Gonna Hetz said, "What's your favourite breakfast cereal?" I don't think I've actually eaten any breakfast cereals in the last 10 years or so, mostly because they're either boring as heck or full of sugar, and sugar's not ideal for the old diabetes. I did really enjoy Fruit Loops when I was a kid though. Artsy Gem said, "Are there any other beings in the pantheon of hobby? We have the Glue God and the Carpet Monster, any others?" I thought about this for a while, and I didn't come up with anything good. Maybe some sort of wallet-related being, which is always feeling the pain of hobby spending or something like that. It doesn't have any powers or anything, just disappointment and sadness. I would like to know if anybody else has any fun ideas though. Trekan Belovich said, "I know that you are not that interested in planes, but do you think the Japanese World War II fighter Kyushu J7W looks odd enough to catch your attention?" And Musei posted a picture of it. This is definitely an odd-looking plane, and I'm sure I would have seen it before, but it's just not one that comes to mind when I think of odd planes. Mostly because I'm forgetful. It really should come to mind though, it's quite bizarre looking, in an interesting way of course, and I would like to have a model of it. A very difficult name to say, Thoyag Vishtanami? I don't know, I think I might stick to Spanish Boy. The question was, will you ever try to fully make a 56th scale Australian army for show and to look cool? I don't think I will. I might reconsider if a specifically Australian set of infantry figures is released in plastic. I do have some metal figures from, I've forgotten who made them, but they are Australian figures. They're metal though, so I don't really want to use them. Plus there is only 4 or 5 of them, and I've got no idea where I've put them, none of which is really helpful. It's not that important to me, so if I do decide to field an Australian army in bolt action, I'll just use British infantry as proxies. It's good enough for me, and I don't plan on playing against anybody who that's not good enough for, so that's what I'll do. Hetzer's Gonna Hetz said, "What kits do you recommend for beginners?" I can't think of any specific kits that I would recommend, but in general, I would say Tamiya 48th scale kits. They're good quality, the fit is almost always great, and they're not likely to cause somebody with no experience to get frustrated and immediately leave the hobby. Tamiya kits in other scales are pretty good too, of course, but I've built so many in the 48th scale range now that I feel pretty confident in recommending them. I think they're a great starting point. Obviously it does depend on the beginner. If they're looking to get into 15mm scale wargaming, it would be kind of silly to recommend a 48th scale kit. But in general for scale modelling, Tamiya 48th scale kits are what I would recommend. Head of Secret Science Boys said, to follow up on that, what are some tips for beginners for painting? I'm not sure if I've got really great tips or anything, but I would say prime your models. Occasionally I see people say, "I don't think I need to prime my models. It seems pointless. Why would I put paint on and then cover it with a different colour?" But it's not pointless, and it's not really just putting paint on. Primer is a specific formulation of paint, which will help the acrylic paint adhere to the plastic, because by itself it doesn't really adhere to the plastic. I'm not going to waffle about priming, but you should certainly do it. Thin your paints is probably an obvious one, and there's tons of information on thinning paint out there. Most of it will say something like, thin your paint to the consistency of skim milk, and that's not a bad piece of advice, though you don't always need it to be that thin. There isn't one level of thinness for every single task, so that's really something you learn from experience. There isn't a magical ratio of thinning for all paints either. You start off with a basic idea, and then you figure out for yourself with experience which brands and what colours need what amount of thinning. I would also say that you don't need every different shade of paint, at least not when you're beginning, especially if money's an issue. Just buy the colours you think you'll need the most. Also, don't be afraid to mix the colours and experiment for yourself. If the colour on the model is, say, olive green, you can buy that base colour, and a buff colour or a creamy colour, and bam, you've got enough to make a whole bunch of highlight colours over that base. Take your time is also, I think, good advice. You're probably not really in a huge rush, and rushing is a pretty effective way to make mistakes. Take your time and be careful around details and stuff. Let things dry so you don't make a mess or put a finger in still wet paint and things like that, and you should be fine and dandy. Also, contrary to popular belief, it's okay to make mistakes. After all, it's just a model, you're not doing open heart surgery, and you can always either correct a mistake or strip it and start over again. I would say there's not a single painter in the world who doesn't make mistakes. If someone claims they don't make mistakes, they're probably lying, or they might just be being sarcastic. The trick is to learn from mistakes you make, and you will make mistakes. You've got to start somewhere, and most people aren't very good when they start. Nobody's an amazing painter the first time they pick up a brush, so just keep going at your own pace, and if people try to shit on your efforts, don't let it get you down. They probably don't know what they're talking about. Also, and I feel this one is rather important, it's a hobby and it should be fun. So, have fun. I might be a bit waffly, but I think those things make sense. They seem like reasonable advice, and I can't think of anything else, though I probably will as soon as this video goes live, when I can't change it. Trekan Beluvic said, "When you think of games you played once, which one do you think you should play again soon? Do you mean games I only played one time, or games that I've played in the past? Because I can't think of any that I just played once and I should play again. But games I used to play, there's plenty. I've been thinking about Railroads Online, which I did play a lot of for a while, and I do want to play it again, but loading the trains is just awful and tedious. I did see that they have a roadmap now, and that problem is going to be addressed at some point, so maybe eventually I'll get to play that again, without spending, 45 minutes loading my train just to drive it down the tracks for 2 minutes and load it again. Other than that, there's a lot of games I would really like to play again, though I am actually having a hard time thinking of any off the top of my head. I just recently got Command & Conquer from the Humble Bundle, so I'm going to play that again, almost certainly on stream. And a game I was recently tempted to play again was EVE Online. I did try to log in, but I don't remember my password, so I probably won't, and it's probably for the best. I'll stick to winning EVE, I think, and I did try to think of more games I should play again, but I'm just coming up blank. I guess it's because I'm old and crap. Remembering things is hard. It's another one of those things I'll come up with plenty of ideas when the video's live and I can't do anything to add more. Hetzer's Gonna Hetz said, "Can the Submarine Spitfire fly in the moon's atmosphere? I really doubt it. I would expect the lack of air might mean that the way wings generate lift wouldn't work, though I'm not a scientist, so I'm only assuming here. Also, the engine probably wouldn't function very well without oxygen, and nor would the pilot, come to think of it, so it's almost certainly a no." That British model guy said, "Which tank would make the best submarine?" I don't think any of them would actually make a good submarine at all. A TOG 2 would be my choice though. It would obviously need a whole lot of modification to be able to submerge without just filling with water, but it is the funniest choice. People say it's already a boat, so why not? Spanish Boy said, "Would you ever build a model that comes with a diorama, or just a building set itself? Mini-Art has a lot of both, with some being diorama sets and others including figures and one with an artillery piece. It may be a good change from the weathering of a vehicle, but the challenge of the actual diorama itself, and there's a picture as an example. I have somewhat recently built a tank that came with a diorama, the Meng FT-17. It had a little diorama of a trench, and I thought it was pretty cool, and I would certainly be interested in doing more things like that in the future, as long as they're not too big. I don't have a lot of storage space." Hetzer's Gonna Hetz said, "Any plans on building and painting Revel's 32nd scale Iron Maiden Spitfire? It's based on a 2014 tooling, and it's iron hetzing Maiden. What more could you ask for?" I haven't really thought about doing that, though it would be cool. Hopefully a 2014 tooling wouldn't be too bad. That said, I would actually be more interested in doing either the 757 or 747 that Maiden actually used for touring. I kind of think that's a bit cooler, being a model of something the band actually used, if that makes sense. I don't plan on actually buying either of those kits anytime soon, but you never know, and if I see any of them on sale I'll probably pick them up. In the YouTube comment section of last month's Ask a Herbert Erpaderp, Trekan Beluvic said, "I'll celebrate the 150th show by giving during your next stream nothing at all." Nothing at all, nothing at all. Stupid sexy Flanders. Nothing is the most brutal gift of all. Steve Stevenson said, "Lol, calls himself a gamer but won't play hard games because ooh, they're too hard, what a girl." Punctuation is important. I don't, in fact, identify as a gamer, mostly because I would rather not associate myself with the loud, shitty type of people who identify as a gamer. You know, the kind with the shit takes, who feel girl is a pejorative. I mean, obviously not everybody who considers themselves a gamer is an awful shithead, but the loud, racist, homophobic, sexist incel types do kind of ruin the whole thing. I'm just someone who happens to enjoy video games. I'm fine being a casual gamer because I've got more than enough other things to enjoy, and I play to enjoy myself, not to prove to some dingaling on the internet how good I am at video games or whatever. Video games are for everybody, and you can enjoy them in whichever way you like, but you do get bonus points for upsetting man-babies by having fun. Anyway, that's all the questions for this month. How about we have a look at some of the models that have been shared on the Discord server in the last month or so? Trekan Belovic painted this glorious comet. This is a 15mm scale Battlefront model. Trekan's story for this tank is that it's only got a T number and stars, but no other markings, because it's a trial tank that hasn't been assigned to a particular unit yet. I do rather like hearing people's stories for why they've done certain things with their models. Keeps things interesting. Trekan also finished a minefield marker, which was made from an old CD. Remember CDs? CDs are really good for bases and things like this. Also, it seems the comet has been tested in the minefield. I don't know if this is a successful result or not. Either way, very well done. Sneaky Zaku shared this Astral Claws Breacher. I think this looks really cool, and like others mentioned, the shield is awesome. These are not regular Games Workshop models, in fact they're true-scale Marines 3D printed from Vummel fingers. I don't know much about 40k or alternative sources for models for 40k, but this is cool, and I do like that you can get alternative models. Here's a couple of pictures of the squad almost completed. They just need some decals and basing. Yantima shared this flying machine. It's a Starfighter, which is a bit of a confusing name because it sounds like something you would use in space. But no, it operates within the Earth's atmosphere. This is a 32nd scale kit from Italy, and Yan says that it is a good kit overall, but the fit isn't the best. It's been painted to represent a plane stationed at the Volkel Air Base in the Netherlands in 1979, and I think it looks rather good. Peterenko shared this tractor diorama, saying, "This is my first ever attempt to make a diorama. How did I do?" I would say that you've done really well, and I will. You've done really well. The tractor model itself is really good, and I'd kind of like to know more about that, but the diorama itself is rather convincing. Looks like that tractor might not have a fun time in that area. Maybe he's going to need to be towed. Either way, it's an excellent job. Dermax shared this Black Templar. I don't know much about the model, but it's clearly been painted really well, and I rather like the chains. Chains around the sword hand don't really seem like the most practical choice, but who cares? It looks awesome. After nearly a year of work, Musei has completed this ship. It's a 96th scale, which is one I don't hear of very often. It's a model of the Confederate ironclad ram, Albemarle, which I'm probably saying totally wrong. The model is from Cottage Industry Models, and it looks like a really good kit, and obviously it's been built and painted really nicely. Quite a lot of good detail here, and I rather like that there's a cutaway showing the crew inside doing their jobs. Very nicely done. I do find really old tech like this pretty interesting. Stolus shared this really cool little steampunk fox. This model is from Titan Forge Miniatures, and I don't know anything about the scale or anything, but that doesn't really matter. It's an awesome little fox friend, who would surely not attack me if I were to try and pat them. And that's it for the models this month. Of course, there are so many models shared on Discord that I couldn't possibly share all of them here within a reasonable time frame. So if you do want to see everything, feel free to pop on over to the Discord server, which is linked in the description below, and maybe share some of your own work. That would be awesome. As always, a big thank you to everybody who shares their models and asks questions, and especially thanks to my patrons. I appreciate all of you. Ask a Herbert Erpaderp will return next month, so get your questions in. If you've not already done so, why not subscribe here on YouTube? It's easy and free, but if you've got the means, and you want to help a Herbert Erpaderp do Herbert Erpaderp things, as well as see my videos a bit early, consider becoming a patron. You can find links to Patreon and all of my other things like Discord and social media in the description below. And, as always, I shall return soon. So until then, be excellent to each other, have a fantastic day, and thanks for watching. Farewell.